Give us a countdown so we don't say something foolish when we're being broadcast. I know, but I don't want to. I say dumb stuff when they're not alive.
At least for your third meeting.
Yeah, you don't know me very well. My foot's been in my mouth so hard before it took me half hour to flip back in. Stuff coming through the city.
This is Councilman Brooklyn.
Well, I know,
So we sponsor about 70 youth at Beaver County Fair. And they're sending a thank you, but because I retired, they probably stopped over there and I wasn't there. And so they're probably from Hooper at all.
you'll get it.
Live down here.
And only Morgan will look at it.
Yeah, these kids, I love them. That's my backsplash. What do I do with those kids? That's the one job I want. I see you with the talk to all of those kids.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're happy to have you here for our work meeting. This is for our Hooper City Council, and it is Thursday, January 22nd. We're happy to have with us tonight Cody Peter and Robinson. They're going to do a presentation for us on an economic development policy that we would like to probably end up implementing here in Hooper City that I think would be beneficial for our city. I wanted them to come and explain to you, and you can ask questions. This is your time, and just remind you, we need to speak a little louder so those that are listening will be able to hear, and they also have closed captions, which might help them as well. So thank you for coming, and we'll turn the time to you.
Can I have 1 second first? You need to understand that you guys understand this very well. For me, it would be great if it's in 101 section and very clear on that. And it would help me.
And I'm worse than him. So.
Well, good. Okay, well, I appreciate that. That will be our goal is to, and from a broader standpoint, what we're trying to accomplish is to have a true work meeting with you and to develop the principles that will feed into an economic development policy. So first introductions, I am Cody Dieter with Energy Finance and Government, EFG Consulting. And I've been working in the municipal industry for 20 years. Bob and I have worked together for half of those, I think, probably. So my area of expertise is long-term strategic planning, financial planning, thinking about the services that you provide. In particular for this, we're talking about economic development and how that how you can shape economic development in your community. So I'll push pause there and then let Bob introduce himself.
Yep. So I'm Rob Sant. I'm with a company called Urban and Main Consulting, president there. Like Cody said, we worked together for over 10 years. My main expertise is in economic development consulting with really a focus area on project areas. So like CRAs, which is what we're going to talk about today, things like that, the policy. And I do strategic planning as well, fiscal impact studies, and really kind of once you get the policy in place, my expertise is what will come out of that policy. So
Awesome. Do you have a handout you want to
Yeah.
share? Okay, so we'll hand this out first of all, and then as he's doing that, just want to share with you a couple of thoughts about how we generally see the city, some of the tools that you have to influence the direction of development in your community. You're all familiar with the planning commission and zoning regulations, which ultimately are your purview. So you can decide what land uses you'll allow in your city. That's a prescriptive way of saying, this is where we want commercial development, and this is where we want residential development. This is where we want certain types of commercial versus, other types that we don't want. And you're very hopefully familiar with that whole process. That's not really what we're talking about today, but that's kind of a prescriptive way for you to say, this is where we want to go. Now, what happens when you want to have encourage a certain type of development? there are incentives that you can provide or tools that you can use that will allow that development to come in, and you can direct that with more specificity. So I think with that, our goal is to have this conversation so we understand the principles that are important to you. So we can then put those on paper and develop a policy. And then when certain things happen in the city, you can be proactive and say, hey, we want development here and we want to encourage it, or we don't want that type of development and we're not going to incentivize that or encourage that. We don't know what you want, and you may not know 100% what you want. So that's why we're having this discussion, so we can pull out all of those principles, put them on paper, and then when specific types of development you want come forward, or you want to encourage that, we can go out and find those for you, or we can help you put those plans into place, make them back. So I'm gonna turn to you, Rob. You want to walk through this with them?
Yeah, for sure. So a little, I don't know if at first we'll get into some of the specific tools that are available. But what's important to know about these tools is cities and towns across Utah use these tools. It's not something that's new or innovative. I want to say with community reinvestment areas or community reinvestment agencies, there's over 85 of them in Utah, and it's all the way from St. George up to Garden City. So it's definitely something that it's normal and expected for a lot of cities to use these economic development tools. But a lot of times it's overwhelming because they're new, there are a lot of details in them, and it's hard to wrap your head around them. So that's what's good about being proactive and having a policy in place, is when someone does come to your door and they're like, hey, we would love to come with this development, but we have some of these expenses or some of these issues, then you guys have a policy in place to say, hey, this is our policy, so this will help guide it. So really, let's just kind of talk about maybe a couple of the tools, and then we'll get into some of the key policy topics that we want to discuss. So the first one's called the Community Reinvestment Area, or a CRA. That's kind of been your normal tool that's been used since the 70s in Utah. They've had different names, but they all use what's called tax increment financing. And tax increment financing is usually through property tax. And it's not a new tax increase. It's you look at what the existing tax is, and then you look at what the new tax would be after development comes in, and you get a portion of that new tax
For a period of time.
for a period of time.
Can we ask you a question?
Of course, yeah, anything, cut in whenever.
So in California, they program similar to CRAs, and I think around 2012, they ended up outlawing it and moving to different programs, more like CRA used today, because what they did is they over-exhausted their future earnings to such a point that when they needed to tap into those tax revenues, they didn't have them. Are there protections or utilization requirements for those to prevent that type of thing happening in Utah, or to happen in Hooper, where you may already have limited resources, and say some major infrastructure thing comes up and we would have wanted to tap into that resource, but now we've over exhausted it? Are no ways that we can utilize programs like this intelligently while looking at, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 30 years, and we may have just exhausted that revenue stream?
So I would say there's with PIDs, the government has added some of those requirements, right? So like we have a cap on the amount of mill rates you could charge. With CRAs, there's not a specific law that's in place. So it would be something internally that maybe you would want to set up in your policy, where you look at, hey, we're going to cap it at a certain amount of assessed value that we want to include in our CRAs. So it would be something that you would do as a city council or as an RDA board.
Or maybe it's like, or geographic. You can
Yeah.
say,
We're going to do
certain
it.
commercial zones, we're gonna allow CRAs. You may say to yourself, we're never gonna incentivize housing because we don't think it's the right thing to do. We're only gonna incentivize, some types of apartments or low income housing. So there are ways you can just put guardrails on those things.
Or another one that we've added in here too that you could do is require private investment ratio. So hey, for every dollar of public benefit you get, we're going to require $10 of private investment, or $10. So then you can kind of say, hey, we're giving a lot, but we're going to get this return guaranteed when we have funds.
I don't know if this is a type of when we said it's in the CRAs that should be used only with strong but, or just, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so it's called a but-for argument is what's used in these. So whenever you create a CRA, that's a requirement in the law. And really, it's, but for the use of public dollars, this development wouldn't happen.
Understood.
And so it's a way to safeguard you from just a developer or a business owner coming in and saying, hey, we want $5 million. Like it's doing an analysis to show that there's a need for that $5 million. And but for creating a project area, this development wouldn't happen. And that but for could be very, it's not a specific thing. So it could be the timing of the development. So maybe it's like, hey, we could come here, but it's not going to be for 7 years. That could be a good but for reason. There could be some extraordinary costs. So a good example of that is in Salt Lake, out by the inland port, they have bird migration, which is a really important thing for a lot of people. And so any industrial building that goes there, they have to build a specific type of window, which is very expensive, and they wouldn't have to do that outside of it. So that could be a reason. And say, we have these rules or these things that you have to do that's not typical of a development. So that could be a reason for it. That could be the density, or it could be the type, right? So, and let's talk about with a grocer or something like that. It's really hard to get your first grocer or your first type of retail business into a city because it's a lot of risk. And so Eagle Mountain, for example, that's a project Cody and I worked on 15 years ago about. They incentivize their first grocer as a way to get them into the door. And then after that, they said, okay, we're not incentivizing anymore. Kind of thing. So
So it's like an anchor tenant.
Yeah.
I see.
South Jordan did something similar, but they chose to have their city hall be like the middle of the anchor, which is kind of a different way of doing it. And then everything kind of developed around it. They gave some incentive for that, but then it diminished over time.
Did it work?
It did.
Have you had an opportunity to look at any of the unique scenarios for any of the most recent things that have come up, or in, like maybe the Terra Strata project or anything like that, or any type of things that might allow a tailored kind of recommendation to us based on your history and examples?
We did meet with Malcolm and the mayor and Jared, November, October, like that, and talked about some of those, like a housing development, and then bringing in, was it Smith's or? Yeah, just a type of grocer. So yes, yeah.
Or even just our general plan, what we kind of said we want to do with like a Main Street or any of that stuff, if you had a chance to look at.
I haven't looked at the Main Street one. No, we just talked about those two specific projects.
but that's something that as we craft your policy outside of getting input, we definitely will look at those existing plans and things like that to also craft policy.
Because they all need to sync together, for sure.
So kind of let's just kind of go over these three important questions under the key policy topics for discussion that can help guide this. So the first one is, what types of development should we, and maybe we have to focus on discourage, but encourage. What do you think as a city council?
I mean, I think it's multifaceted. I don't want to speak for everyone, but in my platform that I ran was under the idea that we would allow ourselves to support and respect that it's an agriculture community and give people opportunities and incentives to be part of an agriculture community. Folks who come out here and like that we're a small town, but want to maybe invest in green belt type stuff, or, you know, homesteads, or, you know, do small agribusinesses or things like that. So I think allowing ordinances or things that might be friendly to that type of person who came out to Hooper because they want to have a small homestead farm, or, you know, farmstead or agribusiness, or be part of this community's agricultural environment. So anything that would lean towards allowing that type of stuff would, you know, match up with the platform I spoke to around that programs.
We need to have a higher commercial tax base because we do not have the revenue that we need for our city. And we are not wanting to raise property tax, even though that may be something that we'll end up having to look at. So we do need to look at something, and I know you mentioned an anchor. Normally, businesses do not survive very well if there is not some kind of an anchor that is bringing people there. That is one thing that I would say we need to encourage. We have SI 177 that's coming through. So we know there's going to be an exit on 5500. When they last did the general plan, they had a future land use and they put commercial on both sides of 5500 south. going clear from now, 5,500 west to the city border, which is 4,300 west on both sides of 5,500 south, with SR 177, also going along 5,100. So I think in order for our town to prosper, we have got to have some kind of commercial, a discouragement. We are not, I'll speak for myself and from residents I've talked to, not in favor of apartments. That doesn't really fit in with our rural way. I'm not saying that it could be a duplex here or there, or even maybe a few townhomes, but certainly not any kind of apartments. I don't think would fit our
Okay.
city.
I think when it comes to businesses and that, general plan was first put together, you have to look at it, a business, is it something that is for our area? Or is it kind of a regional kind of thing? We designated two different types, and businesses we originally looked at when the general plan was put together was more local type businesses. Now, when I say local, that doesn't, local, that's not,
neighborhood type.
yeah, and that's not just within walking distance. It could pull people from further away than that, but not a regional type of business where this has to pull on people from Ogden or Plains. It has to pull people from all over.
So no Cabela's, no Shields, you're not looking for that. That big thing.
Well, initially, that's,
Is that on the table?
No.
That's what I thought.
That was over.
yeah.
More specifically, Dale, like, what do you consider local businesses?
Like how far would it reach?
Yeah, well, yeah,
I
like,
think a grocery store is something, when you talk about anchors, I think a grocery store that would have anchor type, businesses, like maybe a fast food kind of place, and there's all kinds of those. But in a way, where we are, people's not going to drive through Hooper on their way somewhere else to stop by and get that. We're going to have something that will bring people here for whatever attracts, whatever that type of business is, because then they're gonna have to turn around and go home, go back home.
Yeah.
Unless the only offset to that is that we just have so many people that live in Hooper and one way out that we can support that type of business. But because of our location, our it kind of limits the type of business that we would want to have.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, just setting up a policy, for example, doesn't mean like all of a sudden you're gonna get everything you want, right? We want to have the next lagoon in our cities, but it's never gonna happen. So it doesn't matter, so what you say. So that's true.
I did hear recently over in Syracuse, and they were doing some development down towards Antelope Island and towards the causeway. But the developer that did that, Syracuse City, required, for lack of a better word, that they bring in certain businesses back up in kind of the downtown area, which looked to me like kind of a cool idea. Is that something like that? A little bit feasible, or are we within our realm to be able to say, yeah, we'll let you come, but can you do something else for us on top of that? Is that stuff within the realm of where we can reach?
Good question.
I think so, yeah. I mean, so there's the difficult thing, right? It depends on, and that's what's good about these type of policies too, it's a living document.
Mhm.
So I see, Syracuse is a little different than Hooper.
A lot different.
A lot different, that they have a lot of existing businesses, right?
Yes, they do.
And so for them, it's more of a, hey, we want Chick-fil-A, or we want, these type of 3 restaurants. And so it's a little easier to recruit that.
We have less pull, is that what you're saying?
Correct, yeah. So for this one, it might be hey, we really need to grow our tax base, but we want to be cognizant of our residents and what they look for. So the policy might be more of a identifying, hey, these are the areas that we would like to incentivize. and this type of business that we would like to incentivize. But then you could include some sort of, hey, this is what our base incentive would be.
Yeah.
If you do bring in this type of
This type
business,
of
we're
business.
willing to maybe
Mhm.
go above and
Help a
beyond.
little bit more.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I would like the language in our policy to be protected but not prohibited. I would like it to incentivize partnership and be enticing for individuals to want to come here, and partner with whatever it is and invest in who they are. But I want to be cautious that we're not prohibitive to people considering us. What I love about the policy is right now, it's kind of up to our interpretations of what we individually might think we want, but I feel if we collectively design a policy, it allows us that kind of unilateral decision-making ability where we can go, this is what we stand for, what we are, and what we want. And then as we start to either approach businesses or they approach us, then we've kind of already got it streamlined. So we can keep this process from going up and allow the, as we plan, these things to be a little bit more streamlined decisions rather than interpretation of like the general, or maybe a person's idea of what should remain or whatever, we can solidify that. But I think one of the things that I hear regularly is that we can be hard to work with, and I don't want that. I want us to be a city where people want to work with us, and they welcome coming to work with us, but they also understand how we're unique. So those that are attracted and working with us are probably more open to supporting that type of city that we are.
One the thing I think so about having our policy in place is I sit on a couple of boards, and so when cities go to them, like the sewer district or the fire district, and say, would you partner with us, would you participate with us with this CRA, then they already have a policy in place. So they can say, okay, this is our policy. Yes, we will, but these are our terms. Currently, we have no terms. So if anybody comes to us, we don't even know what to tell them because this is so new for us.
Yeah.
We haven't had really any type commercial per se for decades.
Yeah.
And then they really weren't anything like this in place. So I think we need to have something ready. So if someone comes to us or we're out looking, we say, okay, here's our policy.
Yeah.
This is what we will be willing to do. These are our terms. So it makes it a lot easier once it's in place.
I have one question, I don't know.
No, you're good.
I'm very interested. Can an economic development policy tie to needs? You said it's a living document. Can it tie to specific needs? Like we have some infrastructure needs that we need to work on, like our sewage.
Yeah.
Are we able to craft an economic development policy that maybe has we're willing to take a little more risk at the front because we want to get things done, like fix our sewer or eliminate certain concerns we have financially or fiscally, and then we allow it to trigger a different, maybe more conservative approach once we hit a certain level or something. Like say we look at a zone and say, this will allow build out commercially to this extent. But once it gets to that point, we're not doing that anymore. It trips it so that we preventatively have people just piggybacking on top of. Because one of the things I hear often too is, well, if you allow it here, you're gonna set precedent, we're gonna have to allow it here. But I wonder if we can build our policy in a way that allows us to plan on that and say, we'll allow it up to this point, and when we get ourselves out of this concern or where we've addressed this area, then we're no longer gonna allow that, so that we don't just have a blank check for people to come in and change who we are.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, so as you've been talking, I've been thinking about, so it seems like your policies can have specific geographic areas that you're going to provide incentives. And then you're gonna have specific types of development that you're going to incentivize and others that you're not. And then this third piece maybe is there's going to be some thresholds or things that you want to have happen. So if there are areas that need that sewer investment in order to develop, then we're going to incentivize that if they're going to be a helpful partner in either generating new tax revenue or new sewer rate revenue or whatever it might be, or even in kind work. Then once that's accomplished, then you can say that's done. So then you're kind of ring fencing. So no one can come in and say, well, you let them do this. You say, well, did you read a policy?
Right.
It's very specific. There's areas, types of development and thresholds that we're trying to incentivize. So
So with your experience, with if something like that is put into place, do the retail developers like that? I mean, is it kind of like a first come, first served? We need to get out to Hooper because if we don't get in, get our foot in the door, we're gonna be cut out. I mean, is that, or is that never, does that type of incentive ever happen with what you just described?
Well, as Rob mentioned earlier, certainly like in an Eagle Mountain situation, there was an incentive for the first person to put in a grocery. Like they were incentivized, and then after that, there was no incentive after that.
That broke the ice, sort of.
Yeah, so that does happen. But, you know, it's not as if you put up a help wanted sign though, and everyone's rushing in. It's still gonna be a proactive approach. You're still gonna need, you know, we're not only just setting policy, sometimes we're helping with the recruitment process. And so that's part of it too.
Yeah, I think really policy probably isn't a good recruitment tool. It's a good guiding tool. So once you have a grocer, or once you have whatever type of business, it outlines, and this is the types of incentives we will consider. This is the type of thing that we'll reimburse, you know, so it kind of guides that. So then when you have a business come in and they go, hey, we need 80%, we need these 4 things, then you can say, well, that's not with our policy. Or if that's in our policy, then it kind of helps guide that, and you use it as a way to help and appear more business friendly, right? Because you're like, hey, this is kind of, we've outlined the steps that you have to do in order to consider an incentive. And that's more what the tool is used for. It's not really a recruitment, you know, like you won't have someone come in and go, oh, Hooper's got an incentive, let's come here. But it will help you as a legislative body with those discussions.
Even if we have a policy that doesn't obligate us to ever have to accept anyone's offer, this is just our policy. So if someone comes and it's something we don't particularly want in our city, that still is up to us to be able to say, that's really not something that we would fit with Hooper, but if it is somebody, it can give us the outline.
Yeah. So there's a great sentence that we throw in all of these that says, ultimately, the decision to incentivize or to create a CRA or whatever it is up to the city council or the RDA board. So that gives you the final say of, hey, we want to do this or we don't want to do it.
Yeah, because it goes back to that opening discussion about zoning. You can't stop someone if you have a zone that says they can come in, but that doesn't mean you have to incentivize them. Like, if you want to come in, you're welcome to, but if you're in this specific area or providing this type of development, or you're gonna help us with the sewer, here are the tools we're gonna deploy to help you. We want you to come in. Whereas if it's something you don't want, you say, our policy doesn't encourage that, so. That's why we want.
Could you get more specific, just with an example on the way that you can differentiate with the types of businesses, for instance, without it being, you know, not allowed, right? So like they talk a lot about in the general plan about having smaller businesses. Could you specifically incentivize smaller businesses, and through what means could you identify, well, this would be a smaller business based off X, Y, or Z, and then so we would provide these tax incentives versus that's an international brand. We feel like, and then twofold to that question, I'm kind of excited by like if this where it doesn't come, but for this. How do you, I feel like sometimes when we have them come, it's hard to identify if they truly need an incentive or if we need to provide an incentive to be competitive. I think that's where we lack expertise is, are we completely uncompetitive without incentives like this? Or are some of these just will last for a course? How do we differentiate? So kind of both of those.
Those are great questions. I'm gonna start with the second one first. So Rob and I have been doing this for a long time, and so we've done a lot of that analysis historically, the but-for test. And so when people present that, sometimes it's a little, we can look at it and say that that's laughable. Like there's no way that you're in business, like that, you know, like you need a $50 million incentive, like that's silly. Like, so we want to be a partner with you. We don't want to just develop this incentive or this policy, send you an invoice and then say, good luck. Like, we want to be a partner with you in the long term. And when other developers know that we're involved, then it's like all of a sudden the cops are on duty, right? They're like, okay, we have to play the game.
Be realistic.
Yeah, they have to be realistic.
So something that a couple of cities have done, Sandy does it, Clearfield has done it, I don't know if they still do it, but they just say, hey, in order to get an incentive or to be considered, a fiscal impact study or a cost benefit study has to be done. And this is our list or our financial advisor or someone that we use. And then the developer pays for it, but it's numbers and it's something that you as a council of the city trusts. So it's not just them paying their whatever to come and do it. It's, you know, someone that you vetted, that you know that they're in it to be your fiduciary, then they could do it. And so that's another thing that some cities do. They say, hey, before we do anything, you're gonna have to do some sort of cost benefit analysis, justification analysis in order to get it.
Because some developers, they try to be slick and tell you things, but like, oh, bring in all this sales tax, it's 1%, and they say 1% times our sales. We say, that's not how sales tax works in the state of Utah. It is 1% for the local option, but half of it goes to the population and half of it is point of sale. So they either don't know that or they think that you may not know that, but Rob and I know that. So when they present us numbers, we can say, hey, let's not play that game. Let's be straightforward and make sure that it's all clear on what's really happening. So.
And then can you just elaborate a little on how can we differentiate between different types of businesses that we're willing to endorse? What are some benefits of doing that that aren't? You know,
Yeah. I mean, that's a Pandora's box in some way. If you're very specific, like if you really want to incentivize ag businesses, you can certainly do that. You can say, if it's an ag business and you can show us that it's under a certain number of employees, yeah, we're going to, and you're generating, you know, some type of agricultural product, then we're going to provide a certain type of incentive. There's no reason that you can't say that. Same with, you know, if it's some big box and you don't want to incentivize big box, you can say if it's bigger than a certain square footage, or if it's below a certain square footage, we're not going to incentivize, we are going to incentivize.
so we have that.
You have,
autonomous.
yes.
So the state's a great example. So in order to get their EdTIF, which is Economic Development Tax Finance, which is an income tax rebate, they now have a policy where it has to be one of their 5 identified sectors. And it has to be, the jobs have to be a certain percentage of the county median income. And so they have that set in place. So you could get as specific as you want.
So for instance, they would have like a tech job and it has to pay at least 50,000 a year for your employees or whatever that is.
Yeah, so like if the
So you
county's
get that grant.
55,000, it has to be $80,000. Yeah, it has to be 115% of the average median wage.
So what people are doing with that is they're not only incentivizing business to come here, they're offering good paying jobs in their communities. Is
correct.
what they're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of times, right, there's that indirect benefit. So, you know, you might not get sales tax from them, but those residents are gonna shop in your city, they're gonna
Afford
in your
housing.
city. Correct. Yeah.
And they have to provide a report every year. I'm thinking specifically of like Procter and Gamble in Box Elder County. And they built that facility in 2008, I think. They have to provide like not certified payroll, but basically like 8 years old of our payroll. And it shows that we are still, you know, 125 of the median county. And if they don't, then there's a haircut that goes to the tax.
Does it float?
Well, it floats because it's
The median income goes
So
up.
median wage.
Yeah, so-
the percentage stays the
yeah,
same.
so it would be based on a percentage of that figure.
Yes, that's right.
That's great, because then you incentivize good employers as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep, and that's cities do the same thing. So Draper did Pluralsight, which this actually didn't work out great for the pandemic, but they said, hey, in order to get our incentive, you need to hire 1,000 new employees. It was like over a 15-year period, and it had to be in-person employees, right? Because they're like, we want these employees to be in Draper, shopping in Draper. So there's a lot of examples of cities having.
And you're saying that didn't work out well?
Well, Pluralsight ended up going to Texas. So, but again, that's the other thing that we'll talk about with their policy is Cody and I would both say this should be a post-performance incentive. So you don't give them money up front. It's, hey, if you build this, if you do this, then you'll get the incentive. And so Pluralsight, once they didn't hit that employee number, they just didn't get any more. And some of you will have clawback provisions. You're allowed to have a clawback provision. So you could say, hey, developer, you need to do a, $2 million of sewer infrastructure. You need to do this and this. And in the event you don't, you're going to have to give us back the money you give them. So that's something that could also be a part of.
Is there a time frame or things on, is there like the law allows them to measure clawback, or is it what we do then?
With tax increment, it's whatever you agree to with the developer. So a lot of developers, you know, if you said, hey, you need to do this for 10 years, they would probably say, we're not going to do that.
Right.
But with CRA, specifically with TIF, it's all of it comes down to a participation agreement, which that's the agreement that you'll have with the developer. And then interlocal agreements are the agreements that the RDA or the agency has with the taxing entity. Those are the two kind of big governing documents. So
I'll spill it for
yeah.
Can you just go through these and explain them a little better, like the CRA?
Yep.
And
Yep.
those, so
So CRA, that's a community reinvestment area. And in order to do that, I believe, do you guys have a redevelopment agency? I don't know if you have about. So now it would be called the Community Reinvestment Agency. They like to change the acronyms all the time. But that's the first thing you would do is you would create the Hooper Community Reinvestment Agency. And then what's unique about that is the council is the RDA board, but it's a separate political entity. So whenever you act as the RDA board or the agency board, you would recess as the city council, reconvene as the agency board. So it's a separate legal entity, and then they're allowed to create community reinvestment areas. And then what you do is you would take the land of where you want to put that CRA in, and then you would, let's say the base year value was $1 million. And then you're going to have all this new development that would be worth $101 million. Then that $100 million growth above the base year, you would go to all the taxing entities, county, school district, special service districts, and you would say, hey, for 15 years, for 20 years, will you give us X percentage of that growth that you'll then use that money to invest in the project. So you can use that for infrastructure, help incentivize the development. That's your tool, is it's called property tax increment. So that's the CRA, and that's the one that's been around since the 70s.
And the upside of that is that it is post-performance, so you're not giving any money away. Some of the things that you need to have in there is this but-for argument. You need to have that so you can take it to the school district and say, look, these guys really aren't going to come unless we give them an incentive, and they have to feel like it's real. Otherwise, they're gonna say, why would we do that? You know, and some of the biggest challenges that I see for some of these is if there are regional type of development, it's really hard for the school district and the county to say, why should we incentivize that and Hooper when it could just easily go across the border to West Haven? Like, we don't care as a school district or a county, whereas you care because you get property tax and sales tax. So you just have to be thoughtful about that. So that's why some of these other tools are helpful.
Yeah. And then Cody's the PID expert.
Yeah, I'll talk about
you guys in PID.
So PID started about 5 years ago. Stands for five.
Is that the one we had that lady come?
Tina Tammy came.
Oh,
They
okay.
talked about.
Oh, the
Oh, she did?
Everything I understood from that, we don't want it.
So but candidly, she's not the best person. I mean, she's
Okay.
stay on her, she's great,
This is.
but yeah, so I was at, they're just discussed PID at the state legislature, and I was attending the meeting, and a lot of the stuff that, like, so Randy Larson's, he's a bond attorney, and he knows more about PIDs than most anyone in the state. And he was saying stuff and Tina was disagreeing with him. And so it's difficult, but
Yeah.
PIDs can be great.
Yes.
You know,
They have a tool.
We'll listen.
And she candidly does not like them, so
Yeah.
she's gonna tell you they're
not good.
bad.
Yeah.
So what is a PID? It's a public infrastructure district. It is a separate legal body that you create. What she may have told you is that you have liability for the debt. That is not true. There's going to be there may be legislation to make it even more clear, but none of the PIDs in the state would ever issue bonds if they're a legal obligation of the entity that created them. Like, that's the sole purpose behind them. And every investor who's ever bought a bond from a PID completely understands that they are not the obligation of if you create one. You are not obligated to pay those bonds. Your obligation, or your role, I should say, your role is to say, okay, here's this geographic area, similar to a CRA. We're going to incentivize, we want to incentivize something in this area. We want the developer, we know that they have capital costs that they need to go vertical. Let's go with the grocery example. They're gonna need to do horizontal infrastructure, and then they're gonna do vertical infrastructure. So all of the vertical or the horizontal, almost all of it can be done with the PID. Some of the vertical can as well. So what happens is you as a body say, we are going to create it. And then it becomes a separate legal entity that's governed by the board of that PID, which is not you. They then have the ability to levy a tax or levy a special assessment on their own property. And investors can then use that levy to issue bonds, to buy, to invest in the project through that PID issuing bond. Backed by the property tax on their land or the assessment. So unlike a bond that you might issue, where you can say you can issue a sales tax bond or a property tax bond, you're obligated to pay that. In this case, you're not. And the reason they're nice is because the developer is putting their property at risk. If they don't make the bond payments, the investors can foreclose upon their property in an assessment area, or if it's they stop making their tax, just like any other tax, if you don't pay your taxes.
So would that district would not be bigger than where that commercial property is? And I think we were given the impression that there'd be residences.
Only if you allow
You define what the geographic boundaries would be.
Do they mix and match? Like CRAs, PIDs, is there,
you do it on top of it.
yes, like, for
A lot
instance, could you combine the PID to a central area where the CRA encompass more turf around the outside?
Sure.
Yeah, and a lot of people will use the CRA to pay the debt service on the public infrastructure district. So it's a way to also pay for that.
Just a curious question, you guys been involved in all with Wahole subdivision in Colville? Have you heard any?
I know about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and it's a tremor, okay.
Yes, and I'll say this about that project. The developer has declared bankruptcy.
Yes.
There's no question about that. The PID bonds that were issued are not in default.
Okay,
There was EB-5 financing. I don't know if you've heard of that.
yeah, that's where you, out of a foreign country,
Get a
gets
visa.
visas to come to the United States, yeah,
So
yeah, blah, blah,
you
blah.
pull them together and there's money there. That EB-5 provider, as says in the documents, have paid the debt service on bonds. The bonds are not in default. What do I think is gonna happen? The developer's either gonna come out of bankruptcy or a new developer's gonna come in, and then 5
And buy
years,
it.
we're gonna be like, that was exactly like things are supposed to. Colville's not in trouble. State of Utah's not in trouble. The investors knew with absolute certainty that there was this risk, and they're happy because the EB-5 providers have paid the debt. So, with due respect to the auditor, she's causing a lot of consternation about something that it's working exactly as the PID is supposed to. Is it unfortunate? Yes, but development's still going forward, and the only person who's taking risk in this are the investors.
Okay, because my interest in that is I have property borders,
Oh,
the actual
okay.
property of the
Yeah.
Wahole subdivision, and we deal with a lot of mumbo jumbo. They were trying to get easements through our property, yada, yada, blah, blah, ad nauseum forever and ever again. And I've just been watching this thing, and I'm watching pretty closely, and I see this round and round, and it's now trying to get the bankruptcy court to allow the EB-5 people to take over, because everybody's trying to get first position basically now on the subdivision, golf course, blah, 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 so that they're better protected basically. And just, I'm glad to hear what you're saying, because there's a lot of people I know in Colville that think, oh, we're in deep doggy do right now in the city because of the way that it was set up.
And for some reason, the auditor wants to make that an obligation of Colville, and it seems like, I don't know why that would be something that you would want
No,
to inure risk to the cities and the states, but let's not do that.
Yeah.
I think if you have a lot of upfront public infrastructure costs, then that's when a PID would make a lot of sense. So like right now, I'm helping Pleasant View with CRA for their Rise Bakery. And for that one, Rise they wanted to do an expansion, which is a lot of personal property investment. And they have bakeries all over the country. And so for them, it's just, hey, for this potential, we could use a little bit of help. There's not a lot of public infrastructure costs, so a PID wouldn't make sense,
Okay.
but a CRA would. The other two, go ahead.
And with the PID, she said then they just passed that tax on to all those people that buy those homes.
Yes.
So if they had like, you have 20 people and then all of a sudden they're paying maybe, as much as $500 more in
Could be,
extra money.
And that's a good point, but it's not like it's, so when you bought your home, there was, this much paperwork, and you probably didn't read most of it, because it was really thick.
No.
Yeah. But the difference, but if there was a title report, and if it said on there in big bold letters, if you buy this property, it's subject to 1.5% additional tax. You probably pay attention to that, and that's what's required in a PID. It's on the title report, it's like right there, it's not, there's like, usually on some of the title reports will say there might be assessments or property taxes that you may or may not know about, and you just don't buy. But in this case, you clearly know, and you can walk in and say, well, if I'm gonna pay an additional $500 a year, did you decrease the value? You know what I mean? Like, did you take that into account on the property value that you're selling to me for? And they will, the market will shake that out, and so everyone will know. And I think the other thing is sometimes they're like, well, people will look at each other and say, well, what's your property tax bill? It's higher than mine. It just isn't very practical. I don't know that. I mean, I don't do that with any of my neighbors. I don't like call up Rob and say, what are you paying in Kaysville? What am I paying in 12 County? It's just I'm always kind of scared.
It's kind of like, yeah, potato, tomato, it's not really relevant. What's going on in Tulare County doesn't apply to what's going on.
And then you have a lot of so Weaver County's created quite a few kids, or at least for sure one. I don't know Stephanie Russell, she's presented to council before about PID policy, but they have a PID policy, and again, you could have a PID policy that says, hey, we don't want to do PIDs for residential. We only want to do this type of PID. And so
Yeah.
that's something that every city would do if you get a PID, is have a policy in place that you can.
And the other thing about PIDs is the risk really is on the investor who's buying the PID bonds. So if you think about your own 401k, the people who are investing your money are the people who are buying these type of bonds. So they are very much they understand what they're doing. They didn't just fall off the turnip truck. And so you can't say, hey, we're gonna create a PID and then we're gonna issue bonds and investors are just gonna come and eat them up. Now you have to have a very strong market study that says, what's the likelihood of this project succeeding? Because if it's kind of low, investors are gonna say, no way, I'm gonna go put my money in a different PID that I know is going to be successful. So.
And I think the last thing on PIDs today is from a taxing entity standpoint. So Weaver County tax entities like PIDs because you're not taking their property tax, right? It's like Cody mentioned, it's really the user and it's the investor. And so I know, talking with Stephanie on a couple other projects, she's like, hey, if it could be a PID and it makes sense to have a PID, let's pursue that. So the other two tools we have on here, the FIZ and the HTRZ, probably don't make sense given our discussions. They both have density requirements and they're pretty dense. So the FIZ, you have to have 30 units per acre, and
That's not gonna happen.
Yep. So those would be your two main
You
tools.
said per acre?
Yeah. So those would be your two main tools.
That's apartments, high rise.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah. Those would be your two main tools that you would probably use in Hooper. So I think with, let's get into some of these key policy decision questions that we can talk about. So the first one is, should incentives be limited to specific costs? So public infrastructure, land assemblage, you could limit, if you want to, what you think your public dollar should be used for. Yep.
Oh. Hold on, right.
Yeah, I was still my notes. Any thoughts on that?
Run it by me again, I was
So
being foolish.
should incentives that you offer be limited to specific costs? From an RDA or an agency or a city policy, you don't usually see cities limiting that. That's something that a school district or a county might limit, but for you, typically, you probably wouldn't want to limit what you use an incentive for, but you could if you wanted to.
Give me an example of someone who's placed on it.
So like cities, I can't think off the top of my head, but like Weaver County or Weaver School District, they might say our tax increment has to go to public infrastructure.
I see,
So public dollars should be for a public benefit.
right, because essentially using this type of, like tax incentivized financing, we're essentially getting the control to keep our money here. So we're saying like, so if we said we were only going to allow CRAs to be used as long as those finances went towards paying for a sewer or investing in parks or something like that.
Mhm.
So you're saying we could limit it to that, but you're asking, should we do?
Correct, yeah,
Would
you-
be interested?
Yes. So like you might have, Hooper might not be as big of an issue, but like South Salt Lake, for instance, their big hurdle is cost of land.
Mhm.
And so for them, it might not be infrastructure, but it could just be, hey, this land's worth $20 a square foot, but this landowner's not gonna sell it for less than 30. And so we can't buy the land and do all the infrastructure without some sort of assistance. But then, some cities are like, hey, we're not just gonna give, a retailer money just because they're like, hey, we want to come into Hooper. What can we get out of you just to do it?
Want to tie it to like sewer, water.
Benefit to us.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then just, go
For
ahead.
sure, we would want it, I think, public infrastructure, but I'm not saying you just limit it.
Yeah,
Maybe a focus on that.
Yeah, but I think that's when I see the issues, it is our sewer, we don't do the water because that's a bigger entity, but we certainly are one doing the roads and in our sewers,
Yep.
one of our biggest costs that we have. But like I say, I don't know if necessarily we do limit it only to that because I'm probably not even aware of some of the other costs that there might be.
and we could maybe add, there has to be some sort of public infrastructure
Benefit.
aspect.
That sounds.
I think that should be part of any developer who comes in our city should want to do something to invest in our community.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're gonna come here, you should want to partner with us in some way, help us and make our place better.
Yep, and so I'm back to school districts, so that's something the Alpine School District does, is any incentive they give, there has to be some sort of, I don't wanna use the word kickback, right, but like, so when, back to Eagle Mountain, when Meta came in, Meta said, hey, we're gonna buy all new computers for every school in overtime, right? Or another one is, hey, we're gonna give an annual donation to the county, the school district foundation. So there's some things like that where, that you can do as well.
Yeah, I served on the council in California, we had a country called Amy come in, we did put solar everywhere, and one of our neighbors was they had to also put it in our park and put lighting in our pathway in our park.
Yep.
And then put it at our public pool.
Okay.
So we had agreements like that, and those type of things that are like, you wanna come here and do this for everything, yeah, we'll do that, but also you're gonna get some skin on the game.
Perfect.
Yeah, that might be one where, it's the facial bill. Here are a couple of things that we do want to see happen, and this is a way that maybe we also.
Any other comments on that first one? Okay, what about should incentives be geographically limited?
Currently with our sewer, we are geographically limited because we only have sewer in certain locations in our city. You get further west and we don't even have sewer. So for right now, it really, it has to be, it couldn't be anywhere. I mean, there's only, I think, say certain areas. And
Yeah.
So we're not going to incentivize someone to go down into West Hooper when they can't go there anyway because we don't even have sewer. So, and if you said this is a living document, I would think for now, we really do focus probably along that 5500 south corridor. Because that's really, for the time being, where it's going to be, and we know that SR 177 is for sure, there's funding to come 255, and there's going to be an exit. And anybody headed east is going to go along there. I don't know, that's.
Is any of that property immediately east of where SR 177 is coming through that's just farm ground right now? How is that zoned though? Is it, it's just zoned still agricultural, like A1, A2, like, They'll- they'll-
Everything in the city is owned residential.
okay. So that, but I'm just wondering, how far does that commercial zone extend on 55? Just how far away from the road?
It was never.
Never put on?
Never convenient, they don't do it parcel wise, they
That's
just,
what I understood.
just get a ruler and.
It was, she suggested that we go in and mark it exactly where.
Where we wanted to stick, we're gonna sit right.
That was one person. I don't know, you guys' thoughts on that.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, on business.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the answer to that question is maybe, you know, like we think, you know what I mean? Like we think that, because we still have some, as you can see, some agreements to make on where we want to have commercial development. We have a pretty good idea based on our general plan what we want. But, you know, delineating down to the T of what geographic location we do incentives, because we might have that whole section as commercial.
Yeah.
But we really might not want to incentivize that whole section. We may just want to incentivize because we may want it either closer to that highway or further from that highway.
Yeah.
Depending on what those bodies look like, where we want to put stuff.
That is the nice thing about the policy is that it can just be generally, like you say, we want to incentivize commercial development along 5500 south. You know, it can just be that general. It doesn't have to say 1,000 feet or
Yeah.
mile, it can just say that's our general focus. And then someone will say, oh, okay, I'm not even close to that. So
Yeah. Because of the disclaimer that you talked about, it's really up to us. We want to be prohibitive to risk, right? We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're guaranteeing
yes,
an incentive just because you broke one of the.
that's right. That's what zoning is for, right? That's the thing. But you can't do this is very general.
And then maybe it's more of a, maybe to your point, we won't incentivize anything west of, since there doesn't have that sewer, or
Yeah.
anything that doesn't have sewer in it or something like that.
So my biggest fear out here is, I'm just gonna speak for myself, because you guys may know all this, is, I don't know how to make a good deal with these people. I don't know what they're gonna require. One bad mistake can cost us millions and millions of dollars. So if I understand this right, when you guys come up with this, and I'm just gonna use Terrace Drive, I know there's a lot of controversy over it, but I just wanna use it because we're all familiar with it. They come in and they start telling us they want this, this, and this, and, you know, I don't know exactly, how to answer those questions. Do you guys come in and help us? Is that what we're paying you to do?
Yeah, we would be happy to do that. Like, so we're helping to develop this policy. I think that scope is on, you have it, that'll be this part, but then let's say you come in and say, hey, these guys want us to do something. Then, like Rob said, they can, some of those, they can pay you, pay us.
Okay.
Or you can, you know, if there's other general things that no one's gonna pay for, we can sit, pay us absolutely or whatever.
You know, my whole thing is, I don't know any of the legal laws and that, we got an attorney for this, and I just listen to him. Whatever he tells me, the city should be doing, I'm gonna listen to him. And so that's my same thing with you guys, you know what you're doing, and you can actually, yeah, it might cost us some money, or get those people to put it, but we may be saving millions of dollars.
I think that's the norm for
Okay.
most.
What's that?
That's the norm for most cities.
Okay, I'm just trying to clear.
And not just, you know, upper-sized cities, all the way up to bigger cities, use Rob and I or others that like us. So it's not.
Okay.
So one question too, when we talk about specific costs, so we have infrastructure costs,
Yep.
but we also have some infrastructure costs that might not be exactly on 55 that they tie in. I'm talking about, we have this new force main sewer line that we have to create.
Yep.
That has to go from where any development along 5500 would hook into, and then it has to go over and connect into one where it has 4,000 south. So is there a way to have it be, I mean, that can be included in there as well?
Yeah.
Because we're going to have those costs, because it doesn't do any good to put in a regional lift station and then have sewer, and then it comes and then it doesn't go anywhere because we haven't do something.
Absolutely.
Do you
Yeah,
understand?
so let's say you create a CRA in the future along 5500, that makes sense to do it. But some of that infrastructure is not within the boundaries of the project area. That isn't a problem, as long as it adds value.
Creates a benefit within the.
Yeah,
Okay.
it can be offsite.
Yeah, we would have.
That's a great example.
Just seems that that particular project actually more than, I mean, it should need it. There's no sewer available if we don't build it.
Yeah.
That is our platform.
Yep.
It's a regional lift station that, yeah, do it without.
So help me understand this a little bit better also. Stephanie, when we went and talked to her, she says that we ought to have an urgency to go out and draw this out exactly where we want commercial to get a lower tax base. Because every year it goes up. Does that make sense?
What she's referring to is, so in my example earlier, you have what's called the base year value, so that would be probably something $1 million. Yeah, so property every year goes up, right? Now, not trying to, this is Stephanie from Weaver County.
Yes.
So not trying to argue against what she told you, but Weaver County has a policy in place that once you create an area, you have to trigger it is the word, but that means like start the clock on the money you're getting within a 2 or 3 year period. So you wouldn't want to create it. And then, unless you had something on it.
And I'm not trying to get
Yeah.
her.
No, Stephanie's great. Yeah.
Because it's probably me that doesn't
Yeah.
understand exactly.
But that would be the
what I'm
benefit.
trying to-
That would be the benefit of creating it.
Okay.
Now is the base year value would be lower, so then you would have more money to use within the project area. But I would suggest that you wait until there's some sort of
Something that's you, yeah.
something on the horizon.
Okay.
Because what you don't want to do is create this big area and then, two things were troublesome with that. The land assemblage might not be like that at the end of the day, and you have to expand it.
Okay.
Or you go to the taxing agencies and say, hey, we want to create this CRA right now. And they're like, what are you gonna do in there? We don't know, but it's gonna be great. They're gonna say, why don't you come back?
Yeah, it'd be hard. to
Okay.
do that. Yeah, but that would be the benefit.
But
of
thank
it earlier.
Thank you.
Well, we already know that, the school district is not really fond of residential inside of a CRA basically. It's-
Or retail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they can't, again, they look at it on a case by case basis. So the fact that there isn't something in Hooker, right? And this would be your first one, that might be for them beneficial.
Insane.
Or looking at, right, my guess is a lot of your vacant property is probably Greenbelt, right? So it doesn't generate, they might be getting $1.50, right? And then you're saying, hey, we do need this money to come here, but your benefit, even if you're only getting 30% of the taxes, is
Way more on Greenbelt.
Right. Or sometimes we, in those situations, said, we won't set the base year value in Greenbelt.
Yeah.
We'll set it at the actual market value, so we get an initial jump right up. So your 30% that you get is off of, instead of the $1 million, so maybe it's off 5.
Yeah.
So you get.
And that could be beneficial for you as a city too, trying to, yeah, get your tax base firm as well.
So I used to get in trouble with school for reading ahead.
No,
yeah. I'm just curious, this thing that says like, should it be required to have private investment ratios? Is it possible to word that as, could it be prioritized? I don't know if we want to require it, but could it be prioritized?
I like that word.
Where if there are people who say, we're willing to invest alongside you.
Yep.
Then we're willing to do these programs, like we can prioritize, anybody who's willing to put their own money. into this.
Definitely.
I think it's a great way to say it, because you can put that in your policy that we will prioritize, and that's like, they can read that and be like, oh, okay.
Will you help us with that modification, make our bill list, because we just give you.
And then the other thing too with that ratio that is like, so Salt Lake County, one of their policies, they say for us to consider incentivizing it, for every dollar of public investment, you have to bring in $6 of private investment, right? So it could be like, hey, the TIF is $5 million, but they're investing, I have to fast math here, $30 million,
Sure, yeah.
right? So it could be something like that too.
But I like to prioritize.
I do too.
It doesn't
Yep.
handcuff you
That's not required.
both directions, like, oh, we can't give you an incentive now, or we're not gonna give you one because you're bringing in something that. Sure. Like,
Yep.
we're not gonna do it.
Just makes sense that we would prioritize somebody who wants to bring money into the.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I have one quick, we kind of addressed retail sales all the time. Have you ever addressed like manufacturing type companies that might want to come in your city?
Yeah, that happens often. Yeah, and it depends on what your desires are, but usually most counties love manufacturing.
Yes, and school business.
Love them. They're not as good for the city in terms of direct sales. I mean, if you had the same square footage of a Walmart versus a manufacturer, you're gonna get more from Walmart. But it's really good for long-term economic development.
Yeah.
So those are often counted as school districts.
And from an expense standpoint, right, for city services, your industrials by far the least amount of cost.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Police.
Yeah.
You know,
But yeah, definitely. I think it'd be, and you could even get into specific, like Cody mentioned earlier, we want to focus on ag, industrial ag. Right? You could even say, hey, that's our focus, right? These three industries, you can try to play off of killer, right? So hey, aerospace, things like that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so next one, should
Yep.
this be guaranteed district or project debt? Like what? No,
I would say that.
no, I think
Yeah,
it
so you
was
don't
that.
guarantee
Yeah,
No,
we mostly just asked that question because we want to know where you are.
So some cities would be willing to say, hey, we're gonna bond up front. So Clearfield, another great example. So where their front runner station is, they were like, hey, we're gonna build these super sites, right? So we're gonna do all the infrastructure, we're gonna make them pad ready. So as soon as the developer comes in, just build them. And so they issued bond and kind of did the build the dreams, hey, we're gonna build it and they're gonna come, right? But that's a big risk because they might not. So that's just a question, say, hey, would you guys want to do that, or just say, we're gonna do post performance? Cody and I will say, post performance.
Yeah, no, we guarantee we won't guarantee it.
All right. What accountability measures should be mandatory? So accountability, that's that next section kind of goes into that. So, we're gonna require that before we give an incentive, we do a fiscal impact analysis, or we do a cost benefit analysis. We also are gonna require performance milestones. So basically say, hey, you're telling us that we're gonna get X. So typically what happens is you give them a little bit of wiggle room. So a good example is, let's say someone's like, hey, we're gonna build a 250,000 square foot manufacturing. Listen, then say, hey, by, in 10 years, then say, hey, if we don't have 150,000 by year 12, then it goes away, or we drop from 80% to 50%, but having some sort of performance benchmarks are ability as well.
I like that. I think recently when we had the discussion with Terra Strata, there was some concern around, them not even getting a grocery store done before they started building housing, they're getting housing done before they build a grocery store. And that was one of my initial questions, is do they have any milestones that we can hold them accountable to say, you want funding, we want this person for, I said it when I started.
So Farmington did that. What Farmington did, they had a developer, big scale, like 5,000 units of apartments, a lot, but they wanted office design. So they basically said, hey, for every 1,000 square feet of office, we'll give you 5 homes.
So we put triple A,
So it's,
like Cabela's.
yeah, that's that whole area, right? That's, they're doing all the infrastructure for, is gonna be office and, yeah. So yeah, for them, it was, hey, for every 1,000 square feet of commercial, we'll give you, you can build X amount of residential. That's stuff like that happens a lot in policies.
And having the post performance is really nice for you because then they know that they're marked. The tax revenue still flows though. If it's property tax incentive, the money still comes to you. And then you can hold on to it, use it for other public benefits that are allowed in the CRA. So that's a nice option. Or you can withhold it and say, hey, if you get back up to where you're supposed to be, we'll reserve this and go back to you.
So that'd be a kind of place where we would also maybe consider clawback. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, that could be the clawback, is we're just gonna keep that money.
Yep.
It's easier to keep money and not give it to someone than to keep it back.
Yeah. Yeah, but candidly, a lot of developers, right, because they want to most of them will use this in their capital stack as a way to go and get financing. And most of your financial institutions, if there's a clawback provision, they'll have a hard time getting the loan. Yeah. So a lot of it, it's more of a, hey, you need to do A, B, and C, and then we'll release. So some of them will say, hey, send us the invoices or the receipts that you did this public infrastructure, and then we'll reimburse you. There's a lot of things like that. And then the last one is, I think it's always good to include some sort of annual reporting component. So, you know, hey, you need to send us your property tax receipt. So we know that you're paying your property taxes to get TIF, or if it's tied to jobs. You know, a lot of sales tax driven ones, if you had a grocer, you could say, you know, hey, you've told us that you're gonna do $100 million of gross taxable sales. In order to get this incentive, you need to do at least 75 million, and then they need to show you that you did that.
So. What are we buying in a relationship with you? Okay. Essentially, are we buying your rent policy? Are we buying an ongoing relationship where you're offering us some sort of, any indemnification against risk? Are you giving us an opportunity to, use it as a retainer? Like, what is that? What is whatever we're, this whole contract being put forward for us? Is it a build upon, Asian room, or what is that look like?
Yeah, right now it's simply saying, we're gonna put this policy together and then help you. We want to be your partner. We hope that what we've talked about today demonstrates that we have been around for a little while and we can add value to what you're trying to accomplish. And so, and we live in this state, so we have an incentive to see it be a positive place. So we would welcome you as a long-term partner in any of these endeavors that happen. So
If we were to do, like, say, a big project, and that $175 cost within the, say, like, do we do like a retainer? Or do we do like a thing for this project? Do you have a
Yeah.
project?
absolutely. Yeah.
Flat rate.
Yeah, so for example, if you were to come to us and say, look, we think Terra Strata is ready to go, and we want to start negotiating, and here's the kind of rough, what we're trying to accomplish, then Rob and I would just say, we think that the best way is, let's just give you a scope that says, here are all the things we're gonna do for you. We think it's roughly gonna cost this amount, and it can ultimately come from them, or it can come from tax increment, or from, or however you want to do that.
Yeah, so for like a CRA or stuff like that, you probably do like a scope and a flat fee.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be X to do this.
That makes sense.
We would already have our policy in place before we ever met, because one thing about them is they already did do their, we already have it, we required them to do that impact analysis.
Oh, okay.
So they've already done that.
Oh,
They've
good.
already paid and we already,
Okay.
we already have that.
Even better, because then we can review it.
Yeah.
That would be good, that would be good. That would be good.
What's the best, I think, big thing is we needed to get this in place.
If we're gonna move on, yeah, we need to let people know that we're serious, because right now we're just sort of, they come about it, but we decided to, what we're gonna do.
So Rob and I, we act as like, other cities had economic development directors, they've got enough staff, enough tax base. We act like, we want to be that for you, but on a cheaper basis than if you hire us full time. So we can do this for lots of other cities, and we don't, I don't have any conflict of interest in this area. So we'll let you know if there ever something arises.
See what I mean, counts.
What's the energy component of your company?
So I do a lot of solar. So one of the projects, always here in Auburn, at the airport. Like, twice every day, if you saw the solar field back there, it's huge. Yeah, that was most of my company built that. So I don't have a tool belt, so they can finance.
So on our agenda tonight, we have it on our agenda, make a motion to approve this. You can have them, this first scope and use that they approve that, get our policy, because that really is what we need to have done first. We need to get this policy in place. And then, because when someone comes to us, then we can reach back out and we can pay, like we said, hourly to say, okay, we've had someone that has approached us, here's our policy, here's what we're ready, and then we get.
That's right.
there's a
We can talk
price.
about either pay, it's just something simple hourly, or if it's, that's gonna be a lot of work, let's just leave it at scope. Or like for a PID, that's, that usually we don't pay for the creation of it, we just get paid when the bonds are issued. So that could be something you would have to pay for, and just, bond issuance.
We like that. Unless we have to pay up front, we better if it like.
So do you have any other questions?
Well, I would, so we did have this fiscal impact analysis done. But it actually kind of became a little bit of a moving target. In fact, they came back again. And is that something that you would review and see if,
Yeah, I, just because we haven't jumped in all the way, it would be helpful to understand what it is they're wanting to do and see their fiscal analysis and just, it is not uncommon for that measuring stick, for them to be moving a little bit, changing what they're trying to do for many reasons. One is the market's always shifting, they're always trying to figure out, financing is more expensive, less expensive. So sometimes it's just moving and sometimes they're trying to see if, well, maybe if we say this to the city, they'll like that, or maybe, so.
One part of it appeared, I think, to some to be a moving target because they gave it to us and we probably didn't understand it. And so then we sat around a table like this and we explained a little bit better and people were questioning numbers and we said, no, it's the same document we gave you right from day one.
Okay.
We just maybe didn't quite understand that we could take that expertise too, but it would be good to give it to you to let you look at it because it's always the same.
Yeah.
Always the same document. Maybe
Yep.
some better explanation.
Understood. But ultimately, what makes Rob and I happy is when you say, we want to see this happen, and we help you make that happen. That's what we were all about.
Well, I think so happy too.
Yeah, getting like $175, like we're not gonna charge you an hour and 25 minutes, so let's try. Like, that's not gonna get us excited to charge you, $205.35. That's not what gets us out of bed in the morning, but helping you solve problems, that's good stuff.
Well, the first thing we would then get to is probably, if, for instance, if it is your strata, is can we maybe get you a copy of the
Yeah.
impact analysis that you can try that?
Yeah. Yeah, and we can get with you and Malcolm or whoever and just start talking about, if they're still serious and want to move forward, then we should not just review that, but let's like figure out what really we want to have happen there with them. Let's figure that out and make it happen. So that it's not just piecemeal, but it's like, let's get to the end of the road.
Well, one thing when we met before and we talked, I understand $2,500 is $2,500. With saying that, though, we cannot hire someone to be our economic development director and pay them $2,500 to create us a policy. So this is why I feel like for a city like us, it's beneficial that we can contract with someone to come provide a service for us without us having to actually hire as a full-time employee or even a part-time employee, because we can do that. And I feel like this is something that I think we're ready, that we should have an economic policy, because I think we really have those that will be coming here that are wanting, and we need it. We need to have.
Well, and I'm understanding that we can basically keep that to where as stuff progresses, it can be built to
Yeah.
who it's coming through, so.
Yeah.
We're not putting a lot of risk out front to do something like this, it's just kind of common sense to maybe look into this seriously.
so if we're gonna do it, if we're serious about bringing commercial in, which we do need in my opinion, why do we wait any longer?
Well, that's what we got too when we scheduled from hunt, because we went originally just to see, because I didn't want to be ready to do the numbers, and that was the same thing I thought, we need to get going on this. Yeah,
And I know this might be discussed more in the regular meeting, but, or maybe we can discuss here, how do we come and have a relationship with you? To maybe get this proposal, I'm curious if that can speak to that.
Oh, how we like.
Yeah, how do we, how are you here?
Oh, sure. So I've worked with the city, gosh, when did we start doing impact fees, Jerry?
Like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a relationship with us,
Yeah.
so that's why we.
So I've done impact fees. But, some of the other stuff I haven't done for you, but can is user rate analysis.
Yeah.
Long-term financial planning, thinking about how to pay for infrastructure, and or some people even ask me to help them do their budgets. So it's just a broad array of services, and in this case, it's primarily the impact fees.
Well, as you know, we're new to the council,
Yeah.
so I just want to make sure, that's why I'm curious, because, you have a long-standing relationship with us, as you said, like 20 years, so
Yeah.
that's important. And then is this, budgeted, is this something we have a budget for, and we could speak to spending this kind of money, because that's the other piece that we're asking.
so
taxpayers to pay for this.
yes, I checked with Karen, we have a budget already for consulting
Okay.
in there, and one thing too, within our procurement policy, I really have the authority as the mayor to authorize anything under $5,000, but I didn't want to say, yes, we're going to do this without bringing it to city council. So it is a small enough amount.
Yeah, let's consider that. I appreciate that.
Yes, and like I said, before I even scheduled this, I checked with our treasurer, and she said, yes. I said, "Okay, where would you?" And she said, well, wherever you are.
Yeah.
In the budget.
Big profession, consider that.
Jared, you like this guy?
Yeah, they've done great for us. They did our original sewer impact fee, our park impact fee. Those are all in the budget to be updated and need to be done.
Answering that question right in front of
I actually,
You're gonna be painfully honest with you.
it seemed like we had experts telling us pros and experts telling us cons, and I said, I know the guy that will just shoot us straight and tell us and help us, so we have an expert on our side, so that's kind of how it goes. But
I think that's an excellent way that you just presented that, as we wanted someone on our side, because there are biases.
Oh,
You have someone who's coming to the project, they certainly have biases. You have maybe residents that have a bias they don't want. Well, we don't want bias. We just want someone to provide us with the information.
And we don't want yes men. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's how it is, and that's why you've got your own bias. You don't have any skin in the game.
Yep.
No, so you would just tell us, okay, this is what it is, this would be the best.
we just give you the data.
Yeah, when you make excellent decisions, that's it. That's like, I go home and think, that was a great day.
If we make a really dumb decision, will you say it's really dumb?
Yes, I'll say it kindly, but
Okay.
there have been times when I was like, you're welcome to do that. I don't think we'll end well, but
Okay.
you pay me for advice, so.
Well, as Larry said, we're not experts in this, and so it's important that we have people that are informing us from a perspective that's, but ultimately, every one of us are gonna make a decision that's spending the people that's here money. And we wanna make sure that we're impacting their lives and their livelihoods in a positive way. And so if we have an opportunity, even if we have to make that decision, we have an opportunity to impact that positively, we wanna do it, we wanna do it informed from a perspective that's not just the guy who's gonna benefit from it, but ultimately from our citizens here in Denver that are gonna ultimately either pay the cost or get the benefit of it. So, I think it's important that we have a trusted relationship with you. It's valuable. So I'm glad to hear that you've done work with us for 20 years. That's important. But also we do need to be real with us. Like if we're heading in a direction that you say, hey, this wouldn't work for your city based on what you told us in that work meeting, we gotta have a balance that too, like you gotta speak truth to power.
Absolutely.
I just got a review from South Salt Lake and they enjoy working.
See?
Oh, good.
There you go.
Did you go to the one stores too? I just wanted to. Well,
Any other question for them?
I think you did the 101 for me very well.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's our job.
And you're welcome to stay, because I'm gonna be in the meeting, it's just a motion.
If you think we need to be there, we'll stay. We'll write you a policy.
I don't know that they need to stay, so.
So will this be brought up as a, what do they call it, a hearing with that?
No, it's just a motion.
So nobody will want to ask them questions outside of us. And I'm good with what I am.
Because like I said, because of the.
It's not gonna be-
Okay. Okay.
Then help with this, tomorrow, and then you can just.
Yeah, then just let's
Right,
reach
yes,
out.
right.
Cody runs great and you.
Yeah, anyways.
Thank you.
Want to know questions, forms and questions.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Be in touch.
See you.
Okay, so we have some things we can touch about.
Yeah.
So I work in South Salt Lake.
Oh, you do?
Josh is my boss.
Rest of
Oh, okay.
Yeah. First time you did. So what have you been, what was you working on specifically?
Okay, so a couple of things that we needed to talk about. Last time we talked about our meeting schedule, and we didn't really get into that probably as much as we could have. So that is something that we need to decide about our meeting schedule. I'll see some of that
Yeah.
Eric provided around. So this is.
Shoot us straight.
Currently in our code, we have all of that, that's all designated, but as it's their dimension with that, when you send us in food, so it's more of a policy.
Oh, yeah,
correct?
That's what we're talking about?
That's what we're talking
Okay.
about, because it goes along
Okay.
with our meeting schedule.
After this, I just want a few minutes after the, we talk about this issue.
Okay, yes. So, we had talked about last time about because, and that's a question I have for you. So currently in our code, it says that meetings will be scheduled at least twice monthly. Do we need to change that in our code?
I would recommend.
Okay, so some things we need to change in our code, but some things we can just have as a policy.
Correct. So if we want to change having less than 2 meetings, probably should change the language a bit, make it a little bit more vague, that we do 1 meeting for sure, and also if necessary, and second.
Yes. So those were some things, so I kind of went through this too, and then I made myself some notes, and anyway, but you all have the 1-1-4 is what we talked about before, and I think you kind of that's saying that. So that was the time of the meeting, and we kind of talked a little bit about that, if we wanted to ever change, it be 6:30 rather than 7, are we good having it? I looked at Weaver County, and not the reason we need to change, but a lot of them start the meetings earlier. Darren can't be here until 5:30 or 6, so we wouldn't ever want to start our regular meeting any before 6, and maybe even just 6:30, and maybe it just is, some have said late.
And I totally want to make sure that it's accommodatable to Ryan too, because his work schedules, that we have to make sure that reasonable for him to get here, because if we go too early, he cannot possibly make it. That is not something we want to delve into.
Well, and I think even from talking to staff, sometimes it's difficult for them because their office closes at 5, and they're just waiting around until 6 o'clock, but even if we possibly started working at 5:30.
I think Ryan can accommodate that in talking to him, because he's still tied up down there till 5:15 most of the time. But he felt like by 5:30, he would generally be able to be here by that time.
And then start at 6:30. I know that's only a half an hour early.
Yeah, half an
but
hour,
it's
half
still-
an hour.
Well, it is, and it's, gives them time to get the office closed, everything set up. I don't know, does that work with your schedule?
To get here at, sorry, did you say?
So if we had 5:30 our work meeting, but then if you were here by 6, and if we just talked about things
Right.
that we didn't necessarily, and you were
Need
here.
a
at
legal opinion
6,
on him until you get here.
If you have, so 6 works best for me. I can probably get here at earliest 5:30. But so
We could probably accommodate that, Gavin, because if there is something that we need a legal opinion on, we can delay it, put it on the
I
agenda.
would like to give legal opinions as much as possible. Not in the public, so not in work meetings, but in work meetings as compared to on the dais.
Yeah,
That's the best place to hear it.
I totally agree.
Then it kind of gives time for some discussion.
Right.
Rather than, yes, we can start discussion there. So a little more.
Yes.
Well, anyway, Brian will be back, so this isn't anything that we need to, because it's not on for a vote tonight or anything, this was just a discussion. And so it's something that, we can maybe then tentatively have something maybe changed in our code that we can present Brian next week.
I think meeting for the sake of meeting is not necessary, so I like the idea of having the one standing meeting and an option for the second if we need it. If there's things that we need to put on the agenda. Just call a meeting for the sake of meeting.
That's an easy fix to do too, right?
That should be.
Okay.
Well, and sometimes too, like there's 2 different conferences that are in Utah, with cities and towns. And sometimes it's hard when we went to a conference Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we come right to the meeting Thursday night, or, sometimes you really feel like you've already had 3 days of meetings that week, but necessarily if there's not something specifically that we're doing.
Well, in a lot of cities, often get their city council with their planning commission, give the citizens an opportunity to attend more than one thing or to be involved in more than one thing. And so we have multiple stacked up meetings that can be part of the people that attend multiple things.
Yeah, well, and I also, I'm talking county too, who's the treasurer, because usually what would happen is we would have our 2 city council meetings and we'd call an additional meeting for a budget meeting. Well, then we were having 3 meetings rather than 2, and so you'll see on here, which we wouldn't necessarily call a budget meeting, but then we could use maybe our second time for a budget meeting rather than having a 3rd meeting for the month. Because we hope our residents come, even well, that would be something then, we could possibly then, so that would need to be a change then with our, excuse me, our code is then it says, well, it just says time of meeting, but they never ever listed the time, it just had at least twice monthly, but we could change that. And so, because they said how our code currently reads is a work meeting may be held on each Thursday. Well, we don't do that. We have a work meeting before, so I don't know when they did this 25 years ago, if that's what they did. I don't know, but that's never been updated.
Something help you.
No.
You can brush that up. For me.
Yeah.
And then also it talks about to appropriate media representatives, and on another page too, it talks about that it has to go to a newspaper, at least one newspaper, we don't publish it in the newspaper anymore. So there's really don't have no reason to have that in the home, that we have to publish it in the newspaper because,
And our code could refer to a policy as well.
okay,
So that's another option. That's, I think Kaysville does that. That Kaysville policy is pretty thorough.
so their code then is pretty much
It
that
references
references
to the
it to
policy.
the policy.
That's an option. That would take a little longer.
Yeah,
Then,
We want simple.
yeah, simple would just be to make the fix about the 2 meetings.
okay. The one thing I wanted to talk, because we haven't, now we have in the council, is it talks about no more than one meeting for a prayer or other devotional. And that is something we have always done here in Hooper, of course, the pledge and the prayer. Is that something where it can be a devotional? Is that something you're still interested in having a prayer or a devotion?
I think that's, to me, a very valuable part of who I am and the authority that I have. So I think that it's necessary that we continue in that tradition.
I second that.
I don't see any.
I got comfortable with that too, but I want to see how you felt.
Completely legal.
Yeah, and one thing that we've done, Morgan has just assigned someone, which we found worked out a little bit easier because then when you're kind of not saying, oh, who's gonna say, you know, and a lot of the other boards I serve on, that's just how it is. And if anyone feels uncomfortable with the prayer or the pledge, you can let them know, and but if not, then it's just a, you know, she will assign that. And that's already on the agenda.
Well, I like that also, I just think future focus, it doesn't make a distinction, necessarily in religion.
No,
And so that's nice because it's agnostic to that point. It allows us to just say, you know, whoever's gonna offer that. You know, I'm openly the person of Christian faith, but it doesn't mean that somebody here will serve and is not that. Then gets an opportunity to offer that prayer devotional how they see it as well.
Some cities invite different clergy from different churches that are in the area. We want to do prayer, so.
I think somewhere in our code, it said something, if we did that, we had to give them so many hours notice, or I.
I had given some notice, I read that too.
But I thought, okay, maybe that's something we want to keep in there, maybe we, I don't know.
Like actually it says in the way, someone can request, anyone can request a piece of prayer and then they need less. Or something.
It says no individual may request it more than once in the year. Like if you would absolutely want to do it. I think it just prevents us from capitalizing on message or proselytizing from the days. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. And so down here, you know, just some things I've highlighted that I was hoping that we could maybe set some parameters with. Because certainly other items may be added at the discretion of the mayor to council members, but over here, and we've spoken this more than I, but we would really like to have those requests sent the week before, the Wednesday the week prior.
So 8 days before.
8 days before, so that gives time that we can have those, because we're really trying hard to get the agendas out a week in advance. And it's been difficult because sometimes in the past it might be 24 hours with has to be council members, which legally they could, but it made it difficult for us to prepare when we wasn't very sure what it was they even wanted on the agenda.
I think it lends a lot to us being more open to, you know, it's really hard for the public to know what we're doing if we don't give them some notice. It's impossible for him to legally opinion that has been well researched because he has a life and a job and it, you know, in a common courtesy to him, to give him time to research something we had researched, that's a great idea, I think.
So, great examples, this one this week. Morgan, thank you for getting it out to me so early. There was a ton of research that I did on this particular one. And if I got it 2 days in advance, I wouldn't have been ready for it. There's no way. You know, it would have been.
Yeah, I think that, so I have an opinion on this and I support, the idea of giving more time because I think, a few things, one, the platform I ran on is transparency. And I think we have an opportunity as a government official to be as transparent as we can with the public. Also a commitment that I have to my peers here, which is I don't want to surprise anybody. If I have something that I'm going to put on the agenda, I don't want to do that in such a way that doesn't allow them the full preparation to speak to it, to vote on it, to have a discussion about it. So I think it's a professional courtesy to my peers as counsel, co-counsel, but also our attorney, to be able to do this and know that we're asking for counsel and as we make decisions, so we can give them the best time to prepare for that. I said this, virtually at our last meeting. I have a commitment to every one of you. I did not surprise you with something that I want to put forward. I think that I have actually an obligation in my position to the citizens that voted for me to represent them, that they get an opportunity to research what we're going to talk about. And if they have public comment on it, they can make themselves prepared to do that. I've seen it operate in the opposite direction sometimes, and I think that that can be even if it's unintentional, can be a misstep for us as, in our public positions, that we just assume people have enough time, we've thought enough about it, so we put it out there.
And so I think, and this is what some minor committees say, have by the state, if not, it goes on the next meeting. So if we don't have them to Morgan by, say, a certain time, by 4 o'clock on the Wednesday prior, the week prior, then it goes on the next meeting.
Unless it's an emergency.
Yeah, and there could be something, but just a lot of times if it's just something we would like to talk about, that might not necessarily be.
My emergency may not be an emergency for the rest of you though. So we gotta be careful with that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's something that would be like city scope. We need to pull up a meeting right now. I mean, there's probably provision for that, right? I mean, we have, an emergency situation like, just take COVID, for example, there may have been a situation where we need to make the city aware of something and decide on something that's council quickly. I think most people can understand those extreme situations.
well, and it does, actually, and when I read these, I did not just say for me, but for any mayor in the future, talking about the office. Because on the next page, it does say the mayor shall review items proposed to determine whether all requirements necessary is in private. So there should be some, with Morgan and myself and the video, if we say, is this an emergency or not? Then we should be able to say if,
Yeah, it's vetted.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
okay. Well, then, how much time, Darren, do you need, so we don't keep,
Just 1 minute. Next one, about the legal procedure for one of the motions. Do you want me to do it right now?
oh, sure,
Cool.
yes.
So just in regards to the potential motion to adopt that new code, which would give the mayor the ability to appoint a planning commission. Because of the way that happened and that was taken away, we have to follow the same procedures if we want to give that power back to the mayor. So it would require a majority of the entire council. So we have to pretend that Ryan is here. There still has to be a majority of the entire council, and then as well the vote of the mayor.
Okay.
I just wanted to explain the legal procedure. It has to be the same as what we did last time, because we're just reversed. So
So it'd be either or.
either or, so it's either all of the council without the mayor, or a majority of the council and the mayor to give or take away.
Because Ryan's not here.
Yeah, it couldn't be everybody. That's all. That was just that because when I stand there.
Hey, well, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so, another thing, we've had a chance, we talked a little bit about this order of business. Citizen comments here at the end, we've done them both at the beginning and at the end, and, we just, have our meeting said, okay, let's try and at the beginning, some, in fact, from what I've kind of researched, most cities have them at the beginning that say not on agenda items, because it's our last group of things that kind of turns everyone into a public hearing, if you allow, but it's up to you what we want to do with that. And one thing that I did bring tonight is we have a little, and I'm gonna announce this at the beginning, because none of us like surprises either. They might come out and say, okay, well, Morgan, can you do this and this? Well, that's not really fair for them to call out any one of us or any of us or Malcolm, so I put, there are some index cards. So I've announced that if they have a specific question for any of us, they're welcome to come up and make their comment, but if they would please note it and then just come out and give it to us with their phone number, then we can get back in touch with them. Because sometimes it's hard to answer their question right on the spot in public comment. Like I've heard say is public comment, not a conversation, and I can do that as well, so I'm gonna try to do better with that. But, so what are your feelings with that? And again, this is something that, so by next time, we can maybe have some of these, because this isn't for a motion, this is just a discussion, but then we could have some of this ready for it. If we,
Nothing to ever seen it down the way it's doing, and I've been involved, so you guys would have better input on that than I do.
What's your take?
There's been a time or two that it becomes a discussion, I think if we're asked questions and they expect answers, then it becomes, maybe it could even be a debate kind of thing, we want to avoid that.
Okay.
So I've served on council before, it was done the latter way, where public comment was available, things not on the agenda, so we don't create a public hearing. We do open public hearings for things where we want to solicit feedback and get that. I think it's a right of a citizen to be able to come and talk to us, they should be allowed to come and share their comments, and I don't think we want to restrict that in any way. People should be allowed to come talk to us. It's a measure of our professional decorum that we restrict ourselves from speaking back to people. It's hard, it's not natural to do that. But I think we get an opportunity to explain, and you can explain as the chairperson. Sorry, Mayor, I'm not telling you what to do. As an option for you, could be to explain as the chairperson of the meeting to say, we won't be having open discussion. We're welcome to hear your comment. We can thank you for stuff like that. But it's my recommendation that we not allow this to become an open floor debate. We want to give citizens an opportunity to communicate with us, but those things can quickly devolve and they can be very passionate things. Another thing, like you said, if we're not prepared to have a discussion on something and you get called on the carpet to answer something, it doesn't give you an opportunity to give a thoughtful response to that citizen. And so you might, in the moment, be swayed from a perspective that you already established your position on, or been, done good due diligence, but emotion rises. Or B, you might be put in a position to answer to something you're not quite prepared to speak to, because you feel it's your obligation, and I feel that we have to be careful of that. We are voluntarily public servants that are trying to do our best up here, but none of us are like lawyers and litigators other than our lawyer, and so I don't want to say that we're like professional debaters either. So I agree with opening the public comment. I don't care if it's before or after, but I personally think that we should restrict it to things not on the agenda. And it also, when I've seen it done well in those areas, it gives the opportunity for the public to bring things that may not be on the agenda, but then we later could put on an agenda, where they can say, we're not discussing this tonight, but you should be aware this is happening in the city. And now we get an opportunity to take that back and go research it and try to get it on an agenda to discuss in the future and make a public hearing if it needs to be, things like that. That's my opinion.
I think that explained to them on the trainings I went to that what they're doing is it is a city council meeting where we come to discuss things. Yes, we want our residents to come. We want them to feel welcome to ask comments. But we're hoping they look at the agenda and reach out to us ahead of time. So when we come, we are discussing what our constituents think. And so if we have things not on the agenda, then they are bringing things to us, and we've already talked to them, already come, and then we discuss it as a council.
It would be a relearning process. I think that we also give them give our citizens a measure of time if they mistakenly bring something up on the agenda or whatever, without like admonishing people or punishing, like canceling them out here, but we give them an opportunity to, learn through this process as well. So it's something we're open to changing.
That's how plan commission curve was it.
Yep.
Is they have it, and it's at the end, things not. So we present how that in the beginning.
Is there a legal perspective on this?
Okay, there's policy advice and I've seen it so much at the beginning, but I think it's kind of on at the end. It's just odd,
Most times, see, you say to do it at the beginning, it's just not.
but that would be you.
Is there any legal precedent will be heard for the public hearing? Is that?
For public hearing, we're only supposed to have a public hearing for certain situations like code. Code will dictate when that needs to happen, and I'll be advising them.
I guess my question is by action, if we're allowing public comment on things on the agenda, we're speaking back and forth, is that effectively?
No.
Okay.
I think they can come in and talk about whatever they want. If you open it up, it becomes a public forum, so it wouldn't be able to limit, but they can talk about.
Understood.
So they can talk about, I would agree that we should not be having conversations during that time. with them.
There you go, Mayor.
Okay, well, so maybe then that's something we, again, we can talk about next time when Ryan's here, maybe have that on to vote on even some of this. They have approval of business licenses twice, and usually when we have a business license come in, the person is here, so new business license presentations and approvals. I don't know that we necessarily need it twice approval because they're usually all one and the same. You get what I'm saying? Like someone will come with a new business and they present it to us. And that would be the new business. Usually we're not approving them if it's not someone that's new.
I would like to have them here on the one we approve. I don't want to be approving a business license without listening to their
Yeah.
take.
I think if they're-
And we table it to another time when they can be.
Did you down historically running anything why we did it twice? Given some,
Well, the only thought was is that, so that if it was always at the end, they may have comments on something that's on the agenda. The decision's already made.
okay,
So if there is a time, I think at the beginning is the best time. So,
It's out in that code where you're talking about twice,
Yeah, so,
Okay,
so
thank you.
yeah, and G, it says 2, approval of business licenses, and number 5 is new business licenses, presentations and approvals. So but we as a body, city council only approve certain business licenses. We aren't approving all of the licenses.
And that's just part of the agenda, right? And that comes.
Yeah, it's just part of the agenda. Yeah, so I don't know that we necessarily need to have it, that's what I'm saying on here. Okay. One question I have for you, Darren, is in the past, there hasn't necessarily been a resolution doing our meeting schedule. They just said this is our meeting schedule and we just posted it. Do you recommend that we do a resolution posting, saying this is going to be our meeting schedule?
there hasn't been a resolution in the past.
You
They'll
know,
be-
it's motion.
Yeah, that would be fine. A motion approved would be fine.
Okay.
I don't think it says it has to be by a resolution. I don't think
Yeah,
it's-
some cities, some cities do resolution for a lot of, for everything. Yeah, but I
So
would
don't.
have,
So like Kaysville's that example, it doesn't, but Layton does. So Layton would do
Yeah.
resolution. But let me look at the code specifically. for mine.
it just says, notice of meeting shall be given at least once each year. And it doesn't, it just says a public notice shall specify, I'm under H. So it doesn't even say the motion for our,
Right. But you're looking at our code, right?
I'm looking at our code. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll need to.
Yeah. Okay, Any other questions on any of this? And then, you know, I thought there were really good things on, I could put through and highlight a lot of things on this case. So maybe get a little more time to see if you want to, you know, end up having your rules of procedure in later, or you're fine just with our.
That's what you've been saying, gee. When I asked you what section you're talking about there,
Yeah.
oh, you were talking about, okay. Wanted to make sure, yeah,
Yeah, it's under 1-1-4 meetings.
okay,
So when I say G, it's just,
got it.
okay, any other on that? Okay, maybe we'll just, how much time do you want on flag lots? Maybe not enough time now to do them. Do you want to do? Well, so the only other thing was council reports, and I just, well, I don't really need to. So this is something that I've seen done in other cities. And so I just figured, and you've probably seen me sometimes, I have one in the packet tonight that's just a council report. That is just one. So this week, I actually attended a Beaver Fire District board meeting. So I would just type that, just as an example, that if we want to do that, I'm not saying we need to, but sometimes it's helpful. And even, and I didn't have it, I have time to have it in the packet. And then this is just like a template that you could use, not that you necessarily have to either, but sometimes it's beneficial. And what I would like us to do, and if we have more time to do it, so for example, I went to the fire district. Well, I was the only one there. You might want to know what the fire district specifically said about what, or for example, if Dell finds out information about the water, then you could report that, or, you know, like Larry or something from sheriff, or, you know, whatever our assignments are, there might be something that we might want to share. And I need to either do it here in our work meeting, or we could have a little time at the beginning of our city council meeting. But then I feel like one of the responsibilities that we have, as we have these different city council assignments, is so that we can, everybody knows what we're doing. We're not all, and we can, and we don't all need to be there every meeting. But there probably is something that you do want to know about, you know, that we ask for the new fire truck to come to for the fire station, and then the construction, the kind of things that we think. So, you know, I don't know how you feel about all the other, but I think sometimes it's good for us to have.
I've seen it better in the past where you do it as a 30 council meeting, if you have an update, like you're saying, as part of the agenda, or an opportunity just before we adjourn for any council members to make anyone aware of anything, and that's usually where they'll include their, you know, report site and such meeting this week, and just, you know, be on the lookout for that. Or something. So it doesn't require us to put necessarily an item on the agenda, but it's an update to anything we have not related to that. I don't know if you have any concern for that, opening this up to agenda and things without putting them on the agenda, but.
Is that something we could just have council reports to help?
Yes, you can, as long as you're just giving an update.
Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't be anything would be voting on, it would just be, they attended this meeting and
Right.
this pertinent information that I would think the residents would be interested in.
That would be good. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we just kept it there, not too long ago. Okay, we were going to talk about flag lots, but we didn't give Malcolm enough time.
Yeah, next week.
Okay, yes, we will have it.
Number one item next time, huh?
So next time at 6 o'clock, Madison and Nicholas, I never say it, I might not say it, right, your last name, I heard it so much differently. She is going to come, so she is, we'll come and explain to you what she does, but the state has set aside money for small cities like us that do not have city managers. And so they have in place this, it's local administrative assistant that comes. And so she's been really helpful when we did our moderate income housing plan. She helped us with that. We don't have job descriptions for all of our jobs. She's helped us with that. Lots of things. The more than yeah, we call her all the time. And so she's going to be here on the 5th at 6 o'clock and just introduce herself and tell us some of the things. So that was one thing I was in the meeting today, and they said they are funding that program again to do that because it is helpful.
Did they reverse the, sorry, did they reverse the, because I know they were gonna cut funding
last year's summit, they think it was about $500,000. And so this year, they're thinking they will put that money back in, because I can't remember now, there's 200 and something, that we have a lot of cities, and you would think everybody would have city managers, but they don't. There's only maybe 87 cities in all of us, so we probably even have them. So she is really beneficial, and so she's going to come to it.
One of the motivations for having Madison come was when we completed our moderate income housing report last time. We found it a little bit difficult to continue to speak to the prior strategy. Some of them felt like they maybe they're good strategies, but we've completed them. So she was gonna talk about the process for getting rid of an old strategy and implementing a new one. Energy. Where you're in the insight would be helpful. Okay.
She is really helpful. We really do rely on her all the time. She has been a city manager previously, and they have one for each of the different regions. They divided one, and she's the one that's ours, and she has helped them, so well, since I've been there, from day one, like when they introduced her, I went up and asked her if she would come and help her, and she really does. We rely on her all the time.